I'm Greg Jarrett, and you were in the strategy room. Texas Senator Ted Cruz became the very first Republican Monday to officially jump into the 2016 presidential race. His decision has his potential rivals possibly rethinking their strategy, like Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Paul, on last night's Kelly Vile, shared how his candidacy could be different from Ted Cruz's.
Now, I'm a big believer that you should stand on principle and be true to your principles, but I also think that we should take those principles and try to bring in new people with them. So I've spent the last couple of years trying to go places Republicans haven't gone, and maybe not just throwing out red meat, but actually throwing out something intellectually enticing to people who haven't been listening to our message before.
Well, you can't really suggest that Ted Cruz is not intellectual. Take a look at his credentials, his background. Even Alan Dershowitz, a.k.a. the Dersh, called him incredibly bright. We are now joined by Julie Roginski and Liz Peek, two terrific political strategists. Good to see you. Liz, Rand Paul's argument seems to be, I would be better at expanding the base and attracting more people than Ted Cruz. You buy it?
I do a little bit. I think Rand Paul has been making this his message for several years. And he's obviously the libertarian brand is a little bit different than just straight GOP, if you will. But he has really gone after young people, number one, particularly focusing on issues of importance to them like internet privacy, government snooping, all those concerns. He's been really effective, I think, in making that something that is very important to young people, but it's also part of his campaign. He's very much in the camp of legalizing marijuana, again, kind of aiming at young people, I think. Same-sex marriage, same thing. The libertarian point of view is somewhat appealing in that he's kind of espousing the notion that if it doesn't hurt anybody else, you know, people are free to do what they want. And then finally, not to take all the air out of the room, he has been clearly sort of an anti-war candidate. Mm-hmm. Now, he has changed his position a little bit vis-a-vis Israel because to attract regular mainstream Republican votes, I think he has to do that. But he has taken some different tacks, I think, than Cruz and been, I think, consciously more inclusive.
Yeah, Cruz and Paul go after the same anti-establishment sort of groups, the Christian conservatives, libertarians, Tea Parties. Is Cruz, though, between the two, the more polarizing figure?
He is, and not just among Democrats and independents, but certainly among members of his own caucus in the Senate. I mean, you had John McCain, a whole bunch of establishment Republicans who've been in the Senate a long time saying this guy was one of the worst things that ever happened to our caucus, and they said that when he orchestrated the government shutdown a few years ago. Certainly you had Peter King, Congressman Peter King, Republican of New York, trashing him on virtually every network, I think, including this one yesterday. So, and I think Liz's point is very well taken. I mean, what Rand Paul has done is try to expand the traditional Republican base. Somebody's going to have to if they want to win this election, because the way the electorate is trending now with demographics, Democrats have an inherent advantage demographically unless Republicans do expand their brand and their base. I think Rand Paul is the one, maybe possibly aside from Jeb Bush, the one of the two candidates who's actually trying to do that best. I'm not counting Chris Christie as a legitimate frontier candidate anymore, but of the top-tier candidates, those two are the ones that I think are doing the best job of trying to appeal across, not just across Republican lines, but also to independents and maybe some Democrats. You
know, Liz, it didn't take the media long to go after Ted Cruz. Almost immediately, some of the headlines, called him an extremist, some others suggesting he's dangerous, not the media, but pundits. But that's what they said about Ronald Reagan.
Yeah. It's a little bit challenging to go after Cruz as an ignoramus or whatever, because as you point out, everyone concedes he is very smart. He not only has Princeton undergrad and Harvard Law School in his background, which doesn't say everything, but he's also very smart, and everybody knows it.
Clerk for the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get those jobs unless you're incredibly capable. And let's face it, he was monumentally disruptive in the Senate, as Julie said, but by the way, within 30 minutes, everybody knew who he was. So that's not easy to accomplish, and he accomplished that. So I think he has a lot of speed bumps in front of him for sure. But look, in fact, this is what I'm writing about for tomorrow for the Fiscal Times. I think that there is an undercurrent of anger in this country. People who are in the majority, who feel that their views are not appreciated by the White House, and they're angry. They're angry about climate change initiatives. They're angry about Obamacare. They're angry about illegal immigrant amnesty and issues of this sort, and Ted Cruz is going to go for those people. I mean, he talked yesterday about getting the millions of evangelical Christians out to vote. I don't really know what those numbers look like, and I want to research that.
Well, they're big in Iowa and South Carolina, which are critical primary states, but beyond that, good question.
Yeah, I don't know whether that, for example, does that take care of, the fact that women hate Ted Cruz? That's kind of a big thing because there are more women than men voting in national elections, like 10 million more.
Right.
It's a big number. So unless he can change his point of view towards women, Rand Paul is much better positioned with women. Again, the libertarian kind of mantle allows him to say, well, abortion and these other issues, they're kind of an individual right. And, libertarians are okay with that.
Quick question, Julie. Would an establishment candidate with name identification and huge connections to money, since money is the mother's
I wonder
of
who
politics,
you're talking about. Who could that candidate be?
Would that candidate be Jeb Bush? Would he be much better positioned than a Ted Cruz? Because money counts an awful lot.
Money does count. Look, Ted Cruz's biggest problem is not the money, guys. Ted Cruz's biggest problem is he's polling at 4% among Republican primary voters in the last poll that I saw. Second to last, again, the only person who has higher negatives among Republicans is Chris Christie. Short of Chris Christie, he's got the highest negatives among Republican voters. Forget the money, guys. Forget the independents. Forget the Democrats. Forget the establishment. Base Republican primary voters, the people that actually bother to vote in primaries, hate Ted Cruz, and that's the problem for him. Before anything else, he has to address that.
All right. Julie Roginski, Liz Peek, good to see you both.
Thank you.
Check out foxnews.com for more on the 2016 presidential race. I'm Greg Jarrett. Thanks for watching.